Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss The Exorcist 3, starring George C. Scott, Ed Flanders, and Brad Dourif, directed by William Peter Blatty. Now, I have never seen this movie before, so let's see if this is as good as the first one and better than the second one. So let's just get into this movie. In Georgetown, the year is 1990, and we start with some boys rowing a boat during the day, while at night, Father Dyer, played by Ed Flanders, is looking up Damien from the first movie. Then we get the theme song from the first film. And while I'm watching a sequel to The Exorcist, I ask, what does this have to do with The Exorcist? For most of the movie. But when I get to the end of the movie, it made sense, but this movie feels like a detective story and not The Exorcist, as that was bothering me for most of the movie. We get a murder case with a Lieutenant Kinderman, played by George C. Scott, while Father Dyer brings up it has been 15 years since the death of his son Damien. And we move on to Kinderman hearing someone is taking the case of the Gemini killer, played by Brad Dourif, from Chucky, I'll say, who's been dead for 15 years. And I know that's bullshit, because why the fuck would you sign up Brad Dourif and not show him at all? As he's in the cast list, and it doesn't say uncredited, and he deserves better than this. I mean, Jesus. Kinderman and Father Dyer go to a movie theater to watch a motion picture called It's a Wonderful Life and hang out together, and he blames God as he doesn't believe there's no God, and Kinderman feels washed up as a character. And after Patton, George C. Scott is a terrible actor. Between this and the original Firestarter, which is another movie in which I reviewed before and remember not really liking too much, as he felt like a wash-up Father Dyer hears a confession by someone whom I think sounded like Satan's apprentice in my ears, but it's actually the Gemini killer. And as I know what Brad Dourif sounds like thanks to the Chucky movies, and Father Dyer is taken to the hospital, and the movie has a hard time focusing on it being a horror movie, but instead acts like a crime movie. Kinderman acts like an asshole to a nurse because he's just tired, which is understandable, but I'm irritated by the character, and he's someone I don't like as a protagonist because he comes off pretentious. Kinderman is in a world where it feels like a fucking dream, as Father Dyer dies in the hospital bed, and Kinderman wakes up hearing about it, and we barely had time with Father Dyer, whom doesn't appear to be in this movie, but his blood is on the wall saying, "It's a Wonderful Life," and wonderful spelled with 2 L's, which is a stupid cliche. Kinderman interrogates a nurse who came in his room to give him some medicine, who comes off like an ass and talks with an elderly woman who asks him to fix his radio because dead people talk in it, and we find out she's holding a telephone while a mental hospital, and a Dr. Friedman is pissed off about the cops being in the building, as it's not a war zone, it's a hospital. As Kinderman believes he's still alive, and by he I'm talking about the Gemini killer, after 15 years is alive, as this has nothing to do with The Exorcist, as this first half is preposterous. Kinderman talks with the priest as he doesn't know what he's looking for, as he walks out of the church and bumps into Alice as they talk about Damien, and I'm just fucking bored, as this movie is absolutely fucking boring. We move on to daytime, and a priest hears a bird chirping until it dies and the cross drops on the ground, like any devil in those kinds of devilish movies, as it's not original anymore. And nothing is happening that's making this a fucking horror movie. Kinderman visits the Gemini killer in the mental hospital and asks if he's Damien, but it's not. And Brad Dourif is the best character in the movie, in my opinion, as his performance was at best fine. But that's all I can give this movie as a compliment, as Brad Dourif's performance was fine. While we hear a random noise that sounds like the devil, and I thought, what the fuck is that all about, as well as the scene itself, as the acting in this is fucking awful. Jesus Christ. After the interrogation scene, the nurse bandages Kinderman's hand, and as he leaves, she says something rather an odd saying that is, save your servant, which is a bizarre saying, as it was rather bizarre as the dialogue with the writing is absolutely strange. Kinderman reads a book, and as he gets to a chapter which has something to do with exorcism, and the book brings up Legion, which is what this movie is based on, as it is a book called Legion, which did say that in the opening credits. That made sense an hour and 10 minutes later into the movie. And I wish that was a setup, as it never was to begin with, as Kinderman sees the picture of the Gemini Killer with his real name, which I didn't catch it in time, as it was so fast for me. A nurse hears something at night and wakes up a patient who will off-screen report her, which doesn't matter to this movie. And why is that there? I wondered during the scene, but eventually the Gemini Killer kills the nurse, and Kinderman is there and will never see the asshole again, as that was a poorly acted scene, in my opinion. Kinderman goes to the Gemini Killer, as he says he killed the nurse and he survived the electric chair, and says how much he doesn't like it, but come on, couldn't have come back later at the end of the movie? And he might use the body of a priest, as I'm led to believe he's the devil of the movie. I just don't care at this point in an hour and 20 minutes into the movie. I stopped caring at this point. And I don't get what the point of the sequel is. From the beginning of the movie, while the Gemini Killer monologues forever to the point I wanted to be mesmerized by the performance of Brad Dourif, but I just didn't care any further about the movie. The Gemini Killer is obsessed by the devil, as Kinderman might figure that out at some point in the movie, while we see an elderly woman climbing on the roof, and she's like the devil, and this movie is just so fucking bland. Kinderman's wife Julie gets a call from Kinderman about a nurse who delivers a package is coming for them, when it's not really Kinderman, and they put on the siren and race to the house, and the nurse arrives at the Kinderman household, and she faints as Kinderman arrives with another cop coming by, and the nurse almost kills his daughter and fights Kinderman, and she stops while a priest stops the Gemini Killer's room, or by that place, at the hospital for an exorcism, as the Gemini Killer sees fire and snakes while the priest sees nothing. And the Gemini Killer's eyes turn yellow and puts the priests on the roof and kills them. And Kinderman stops in the room, and the Gemini Killer throws him on the wall and strikes lightning in the room, and the priest wakes up, and as does Damien, and he tells Kinderman to shoot him dead and to free him. And what kind of a fucking climax is that? I wonder, is beyond me. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 3.0 out of 10. I don't like Kinderman as a protagonist, as George C. Scott comes off as a terrible actor after this in the original Firestarter. And as a protagonist, he comes off pretentious, as Brad Dourif is the best character in this whole goddamn movie. While this doesn't feel like a horror movie, it comes off like a detective crime movie, which bothered me for the whole movie, until the end of the movie. The movie is preposterous, as this has nothing to do with The Exorcist during the first half, but it kicks into gear by the second half. But most of the fucking movie bored me, as this is a fucking boring movie. I was asking what the fuck quite a bit, as this movie was unfulfilling. As the acting in this is absolutely fucking awful, as this isn't the worst in the series yet. And I'll see which one it is when I get to the end. It was the most boring of them all, as this is a solid non-recommendation for this movie. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Exorcist the beginning. And until then, and I'm the devil, kindly untie these ropes.